I'm gonna see if I can get a few other people on here, and then we should get going. I mean, that should be good. Let's see. Add, and maybe, let's see. Just a moment. Well, first off, hi, of course. How are you?
I'm good,
Hello?
thank you.
Ah,
Hello, yeah.
cool. All right, so, can you hear the other person I added to the Skype to phone thingamajig?
Oh,
Huh.
I'm not talking. Sorry.
Oh, all right. Good. So that seems to be working. We got a few more. Well, add. Okay.
I'll just keep my microphone muted, and good luck, you guys.
All right. Okay. So, everyone, this is John Lancie.
Hi, guys. Hello.
And we will talk. And we will talk today about the Brony documentary, if you do not mind.
Okay.
Cool. So, I guess we'll start off. What was your favorite part of the documentary?
Probably Daniel's story.
Huh. All right. It was nice. I liked the Living Tombstone myself, but I think I'm biased in that respect. Makes good music.
All right. All right.
Anyways, I
Hello?
had another person here. Elliot, are you on?
Well, that depends. Can you hear me?
I think so. Cool. All right.
Rec, can you hear me? Yes, I can, but you need to go live, Everlasting. All right. Here we go.
Cool. Who wants to ask the next question? Elliot, perhaps? Oh, do you guys have the questions?
Well, we are broadcasting now. Folks, for those of you who are wondering what in the hay is going on.
Excellent. Oh, continue, please.
Could we have the guest of honor please state his name?
John Lancie.
Cool. Would you kindly say that again so that everyone heard you?
John Lancie.
Thank you very much. All right, let's get started. We don't have a lot of time. So, we're discussing here today the Brony documentary. Would you kindly tell us what the whole setup was, what the whole purpose of it was originally?
It's sort of a general question, but I'm going to take it in the direction that I'm interested in, and that is that the documentary was essentially not really for the Bronies, although because it was essentially sort of like preaching to the choir, they knew that they were already, a great group. The documentary is really intended for a broader audience of people who might have, really a real difficulty with the notion of what a Brony is, and so that was the intent of the documentary.
Okay.
Cool. I do remember you mentioned, and I guess I'm paraphrasing a bit here, sorry, that the Brony documentary was supposed to be sort of a shield and a shelter, something that could give the Bronies room to define themselves before the rest of the world does, sort of. Have you seen the Brony documentary do that yet? Perhaps?
Well, I think so. I mean, anybody who sees the documentary, all you have to do is, you define what a Brony is in the sort of straightforward, provocative sort of way. A Brony's a 20-year-old something guy who watches a cartoon intended for 10-year-old girls. And then you'll get all of the responses, which are the usual responses, which are what we've up at the beginning, the Fox News response, whatever his name is, that radio guy, Howard Stern's response. You get that, and then you, like I did last night, I said, here, take a look at this. Go and take a look at this. And then when you're finished with it, come back and tell me what you think. And in the end, they come back, and invariably everybody comes back saying, no, I mean, this is 10 personal friends that I gave it to, who have no reason to know what a Brony is, or care for that matter, who come back going, oh, that was really interesting. I was so much more, there's so much of it more there than I thought. This is, what an, so that's, and so it is having that effect.
What was your favorite part of the documentary?
Well, I liked Daniel's story. I thought that was a very interesting. We really saw a transformation with him, and I thought that it was a good example of getting into somebody's head, where you end up you start out by seeing that they have reason enough to be sort of anxietal, which is because of his Asperger's, and really having problems with crowds and on and on and on, and feeling that he might have some safe harbor with the Brony at the Brony convention, and going there and really being transformed by it, and I think it had a wonderful effect on him.
I will admit, I've seen that at a lot of Brony conventions. It's very nice. Really quite something. You don't just... Well, you got to go to a Brony convention to really see that sort of stuff, I guess.
Right.
Anyways, let's see. Well, what do you think was the hardest part about making the documentary? What was the most challenging?
Well, just the amount of time that it's taken. I mean, we first thought we budgeted ourselves for two months, but then when we got as much donations, we ended up saying, well, we have to use the money for the documentary, and so how can we do that? So, instead of having, let's say, whatever, I don't know, 50 hours of film, we had 300 hours of film. So we went from a little mom and pop operation to being full fledged. At which point, all of the attendance stuff had to be done. But we don't have a real company where you have 10, 15 people in your company, all of which do these different things themselves. You have their specialty. It really became Mike and I, at a much lesser degree, having to make sure everything was done the right way.
Cool. So you mentioned you cut it down from 300 hours to probably 1 or 2. Was there anything that you just wanted to really fit in the documentary that you just weren't able?
Yes, we have tons of stuff we have tons of stuff that could make another documentary, and another one after that, actually. I mean, not a real documentary, but there's certainly a lot of stories that, when you go out, in this case, we at first we thought we would have 2 camera crews, but with the influx of money, we ended up hiring 6 camera crews. Well, you tell them to go out and shoot, just spray the room, to shoot everything. And obviously with a focus, with an idea, and then they come back. And I would say that at the very best, there's 10%, and probably more like 5%, which is usable. But then you have to squeeze all of that in. I mean, the mechanics of doing this thing is that, let's say you do an interview, you do Lauren's interview. Well, Lauren's interview was, I forget now, I forget what it was, like 5 hours long. So you send that, what we did is that we sent that out and we had transcripts made. So now you have 5 hours of transcripts, which could be a couple of 100 pages. And then of those transcripts, you have to bring it down to, well, in her case, because we really, really wanted to hear as much, we wanted to honor her as much as we could, you might bring it down to 2 pages or 3 pages. But there's other stuff that was talked about and said, but that didn't really, in the end, you still can't have, I mean, there was a time when the doc was about 2 hours long, or maybe about an hour and 45 minutes long, and it's just too long. People weren't willing to sit through it, and if you make something longer than it should be, then all of the good will and the good work that you've done up until, if you make it an hour and a half, let's say, and that's just right, that's great. But if it goes an hour 35, that next 5 minutes could destroy the feeling of it being just right. So, you're playing with those type of numbers, and you're well, what about this? What about that? And how does it, how does the person who's watching feel during that period of time? Because for most of you guys, this is all just like, home week. You're just looking at yourselves. But I'm really much more interested in terms of the overview, in terms of the future. I'm much more interested in the person who doesn't know anything.
Yeah. That is the main target, I suppose, for the documentary. What would you say to the people who don't necessarily like the documentary as much?
Well, that's fine. I don't care.
I don't know. Oh, okay. Easy answer. Nice. We got Sweetie Bot on here.
You don't have to answer this one if you don't want to. It might come off a little rude, and I apologize for that. But how do you respond to some of the criticism that your documentary has been receiving, both good and bad, within the fandom?
Well, first of all, I don't read any of it, so I don't know how it's been received, both good and bad. But there isn't anything that anybody makes that isn't going to be received, both good and bad. So, if you want to be specific, but I don't track any of that because it's just, I'm in the business of making things, not in the business of criticism.
Okay, makes sense to me.
Good.
But I mean, if you have something specific that you like or dislike about it and want to address that with me, I'm happy to have that dialogue with you right now.
Well, I've heard people both praise it for, just for the fact that it sets us, the Bronies, in a good light, as opposed to what a lot of other media outlets have been saying about us. But some of the criticism that I've seen, the negative side of things, is people are saying it's pandering. Just mindless pandering, basically.
They're silly. Wait.
Well, we shot what we saw. Okay.
That's
a good thing.
So people were. I do know that some people, early on said, "Oh, well, what about?" I don't even know what the names of them are. What about the furries or the cloppers? I'm not even sure, exactly what that means. And I said, well, were there any at BronyCon? Well, not like obvious. I said, well, okay. I mean, at BronyCon, we shot everything that went on in the hall and one of the restaurants and outside and what have you. We didn't go into anybody's, rented room. Nor am I particularly interested in that part. Hold on just for a second. I've got another interview. I just have to tell them that need to call me back. Oh, well, you know what? They'll figure it out unless they keep on trying to bust through. And the fact of the matter is that hopefully this is the first of a number of documentaries. You know, let the next documentary talk about, you know, come at it from a different angle.
Works for me. It works for me.
Yep.
So you say you shot everything that you saw, you know, like at conventions and whatnot. Do you feel that was a good sample? Are you happy with what you got, or do you wish you could have done something else?
You know what? This guy keeps on trying to bust through. Let me just deal with him just for a second.
Yeah, fine.
No problem. I might have to move. There's some people in the lab.
Sounds to be. We're currently
Probably okay.
We're currently getting some problems on our end as we speak.
Oh. Well, I hope the multiple streams, when put together, will be able to. Maybe we can make something workable out of it.
Go ahead. Ask me the question again. I'm sorry.
What was it? Oh, yeah. Do you feel that the samples that you got, you know, at the Brony conventions were adequate, or do you wish you could have done some different sampling, like to random Joes like us?
To bring them what?
To bring them into the documentary, or even have, you know, say a piece for it.
You know what? You're breaking up so much I'm not hearing you well enough.
Okay, let me... Let's try this. Can you hear me clearly now?
Let's try it. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll let you guys watch the recording when it's done.
I said, you say you got all of your, or at least the majority of your people on there via at the Brony conventions. Do you feel that was a good sample, you know, adequate for the documentary, or do you wish you would have gotten some better sampling, like from average Joes like us who might not be able to visit conventions and whatnot?
Well, you know, there's an economic factor in this, and there's also just a shooting factor. You cannot send, we already sent a team to Maine. We sent a team to South Carolina, or was it South or North? I can't remember. South Carolina, to San Diego, to Israel, to Germany, and to England. Okay? Every time you go and do that, it's really expensive. And just because you are going off to, there were other people that we shot who ultimately you just kind of go, you know, it's not working out. It sounded good on paper, you know, they sounded good over the phone, but you know, they don't really, they get, you know, too bollocksed up when they're in front of the camera. You know, there are all sorts of things. So what you ultimately try to do is that you try to go to places where there are going to be a lot of choices and a lot of people that you can talk to. Otherwise, it becomes it's financially just out of the question.
A nightmare.
Right. I mean, you know, and the thing is this, is that you have to understand is that in the real world, a documentary of this sort takes about 3 years to shoot.
Really?
And yeah, and so we were accelerating everything. We just had lunch, Mike and I, with a guy who won an Academy Award. He was very interested in the process of our documentary. He was interested in the documentary. He said, gee, it's really interesting, and oh my gosh, and you know, I thought you did a really good job, and oh my God, there's so much production value up there. But that's mostly what I want to talk to you about. How did you get so much production value up there in what amounts to about 6 months? And so it was a discussion about that, because most documentaries, while most, you know, real documentaries, I don't mean documentaries that somebody does as a hobby on their own or what have you. But most documentaries cost about the amount that we had. And they take about, guys, there's a lot of noise on the other end there.
I'll move. Just a minute.
So am I continuing to talk or not?
I'm just waiting here for a minute to see what's going on. I guess if you have from a production standpoint, what was the worst part about it?
Okay, so let me finish okay, am I still answering this question?
Hello?
Hello? Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
As I was saying, from a production standpoint, what was the worst part about it?
Well, there's no real worst part about it. It's just it's a tremendously complicated job. Far more complicated than I knew. It really was. Mike was a one-man show here in terms of pulling it all together. But just the post on the post work on something like this is monumental. It's just monumental.
Mike, are you there?
Yes. Is this any better?
Yes.
Okay. Good. A laboratory is not necessarily the best place to do an interview over Skype.
All right.
I could have told you that. Anyway, do you have a question?
What's that?
Talking to Mike there, John. Excuse me.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Any funny bloopers from the documentary? Like that was Did you see anything funny in like the footage, like that you didn't necessarily use, but you thought it was humorous?
Oh, you know what? I can't even remember anymore. When you're dealing with so much footage like that, everything has to fit the big discussion becomes, what is the documentary about? Because you have so much footage, and you have footage that's being shot by so many different people who don't necessarily all share the same vision. So when you get there are two very distinct phases. One, or actually three distinct phases. One is the preparatory phase, where you think you know what the story is. Then you go out and start shooting that. And in our case, it took almost 2 months to complete all of that shooting. But what you're finding along the way is that, it's like having a map and you're going to be going across the country. Well, you don't really know where you're going to stop at. You might have some ideas of where you're going to stop, I should say. But you don't really know what the whole thing is. And then you start on your trip and you discover all sorts of stuff for which you're shooting. But at that point, you're not quite sure how it fits. And that's going to be then the third phase, which is the editing process. And that can be really, really laborious. And I kept on saying that the thread of the show is, a Brony's a 20-year-old guy watches a cartoon intended for 10-year-old girls, and why does society have such a problem with them? So that's a huge umbrella. At least it starts the process of focusing it. Now, I already knew that I wanted to talk about, why is there a problem with if you've got a group who is attached to a show that's being about generous. Oh my God, I'm just getting hot with all of these emails. Hold on a second.
Understandable.
Cool. We got Sweetie Bot on here.
He's going on and off.
Go wild. Yeah,
so
it's strange.
I know that I find that something that's very interesting is the fact that if you tell a general public that the show is about being good and kind and generous and loyal and what have you, people will go, "Oh, that's great," and then you say, "And there are 20-year-old guys who are watching this show." Oh, wow, it's no problem. However, the show was intended for 10-year-old girls. All of a sudden, they recoil, and you go, "Well, why are you doing that? What is the bump here? Are we so wedded to these ideas of pink and blue and doesn't it say something about society that first of all this show does not actually exist for 20-year-olds, although they have been brave enough to weather the ridicule of watching it. Then what does that say about society? What does that say about you? I mean, all of these things are, I think, very interesting. And of course, it's the reason that, then we get into other reasons, is that, could this be the beginning of a social movement where people are beginning to say, hey, you know what, let's just try to figure out how to get along. Or isn't this interesting that might be a conflict resolution portion of the population? See, those are the places that I'm interested. I'm also interested in a smaller way, and it did affect the way in which we organize. We said it, Mike and I said it to ourselves a number of times. Let's not forget the emails that we got saying, am I going to be able to show this documentary to my parents? That was an important motivator for us. But understanding that kid was not really the audience. As far as he was concerned, the audience was his parents. So that's where we always kept on going back to, and that is that this needs to be presented in such a way
that everyone can enjoy it,
that people can get it. And when you do something, I used to write a lot of events for classical music. Most people don't, think classical music is really stuffy, and I don't get it, and I don't understand it, and blah, 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 blah. So I had to write pieces and stage events that had to do around classical music. Well, interestingly enough, the people who were giving me the hardest time were the musicians.
Really?
Because they were going, well, you didn't talk about Kirk listings, and you didn't talk about, that this is in B-flat major. And I go, nobody gives a shit about that.
Love it. I love it.
Unfortunately, yeah.
You don't have your general audience on the bus yet. My job is to get them onto the bus. And then once they're on the bus, you guys can take over and talk about Kirkle listings and what key it's written in. But I have to get them on the bus. Well, I felt the same way with the Brony doc. I'm not trying to... the most that we wanted to do, and were willing to do, was to simply be a mirror for the Bronies. This is just what we saw. Here's a mirror of yourselves. Some of it is okay, some of it is... I don't really care what your opinion is. This is what we saw. This is what you presented. And we have, in a very sort of non-focused. Not, we're not trying to find an angle. Because we had editors who were talking about we got to really get in there and and find where the soft spots are. I said no. That's not what the point is. So that's not what the intent of the documentary is. The intent of the documentary is for a larger population to look and go and hopefully have this reaction. Oh, wow. Well, at first I had sort of a negative feeling about this, but I've walked away, a negative feeling meaning fearful. I've walked away going, oh, there's nothing really to fear here. And while I might not watch My Little Pony, and while, I do think it's sort of, I don't know, grown people watching cartoons, and maybe that's a little weird, but it's okay. It's okay because there's something bigger than that going on, and the bigger part of it is that they want to be nice and kind and generous and loyal and the elements here. And wow, what a change that is from what we're usually faced with every time we turn on the news. So that was and is the intent, and I think it's out there. I mean, I just sent it to somebody who really knows a film guy who really knows what he's looking at, and he just I had to call him back, but he left on my machine. He said, wow, this is, I hope, going to go a long way because there's a lot of integrity in this film. And that's what we hoped to do. And as well as I said in the beginning, this film would be respectful, it would be insightful, and it would be entertaining. And so those things are the things that we try to do.
And hopefully maybe a few people will go look it up on the internet instead of just making assumptions about it. Who knows? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe.
How far are you willing to take this documentary then?
That's a good question.
I don't understand. What does that mean?
You stated that you want this to you want the how did you put it? You just sent it off to some guy who said it was very respectful, and I know you have plans for a release on TV, or even TV, maybe even Netflix.
None of that is possible right now. Right now, our biggest problem is that it's being splattered all over the internet, and
our
biggest problem. Our biggest problem right now is that a distributor won't pick it up if at
on
that
YouTube.
point. So it might die on the vine in terms of getting it to a larger public.
Would you be willing to get it to a larger public?
Well, it isn't a matter. Yeah, it has to get to a larger public, but I'm not the one who does that. That's a distributor who does that, and they have to look at the numbers because they're not in this for any sort of altruism. They don't care one way or the other whether it's a good message or a bad message. What they care about is whether they're going to make some money out of it. And if they see that it's ubiquitously available everywhere, they're going to just go, well, forget it.
So there you have it, Bronies. Don't put it on YouTube. Don't.
This is what else?
There's good reason not to.
Let's see. What's one of these questions here? Do you feel that this everything, whether it be the documentary process or the fact that it's released now, all of it, take it all into account. Do you feel this turned out exactly as you want, or do you feel that it could have been done better, or was it better than you expected?
Well, it's sort of miraculous that it kind of. I think it's done. I think that the documentary speaks very well. And could it be better? Everything could be better. That's how I approach every project. It could always be better if I had only known, such and such, or if I'd only, if we had only done this or that, what have you. But given when you look, I was having dinner with a friend last night who had seen it, and interestingly enough, had said we were not talking about this, but he brought it up himself in the clear. He said, "I just want you to know that I have thought about this This documentary continues to live with me. I've thought about it now for 3 or 4 days." I said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yeah, and I see this, and I'm sort of living the emotion of it." Oh my God, I don't know what it is about today in terms of phone calls. Hold on.
Good luck. I don't think we should hold you here much longer, I guess.
Hello?
We're still here.
Oh, okay, you're still... he said, I think about this scene and that scene and what have you. And he said, "How do you feel about it, John?" And I said, "I'm not at that point yet. You have to understand, every edit, every sequence, every piece of music, every picture you see has, every minute has probably 100 decisions that went into it. So I'm still at the 100 decisions. There are things that I go, oh my God, I wish we could have gone further with that, or the legal people said don't go any further with that one, and then the music, I didn't get it in at the right time, or why were they shooting over the shoulder instead of right up the guy's nostrils, and on and on and on and on and on. You look at it from that point of view, but overall, I think that it has succeeded, frankly, better than most people's expectations.
Excellent to hear.
Right. So, we shouldn't keep you here much longer. I've got two.
I do have
things.
one more. I do have one more question if we have to wrap this up.
Yes, actually we do, because I'm having these other.
Okay.
I'm doing a whole bunch of them at the same time. So go ahead. What's your one more question?
If and how has the whole Brony phenomenon changed your perspectives about anything? I know it's a bit of a loaded question, but...
Hold on. This is the person who keeps on bumping through. 1 second.
Okay.
I always wanted to ask one of the people in charge.
Yeah, go ahead.
As I was saying, how has the whole Brony phenomenon, I'm not talking about the documentary alone, I'm meaning everything. How has everything concerning the Brony phenomenon changed something with you, for the better or for the worst?
Oh, it's too broad a question. I don't know. I'm sort of a little bit in the trenches right now, so I can't.
I know
really
it's a loaded question, but if there is one thing that you would pinpoint and say that it was significant, what would it be?
Well, I've really enjoyed my working with Mike. I'm really impressed by his producing skills. Really, really, really impressed. And I'm really impressed by at least what the general fandom is trying to do, and I hope it doesn't get splintered off into little less attractive elements.
All right then.
Very good.
Cool. So, any quick hints about upcoming stuff that you might have done with MLP recently? Any more Discord we might be seeing? Just
no.
Quick.
I mean,
no?
There's stuff, but I can't. I'm not going to talk about it.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Okay, guys.
Also,
we need to really wrap it up.
Understood.
Yes. Okay.
Hey, that was done.
Okay. All right. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you very much, Mr.